No, seriously, I do like stories, and as I was preparing my remarks for this afternoon, I kept thinking about what an incredibly unique moment in time this is. And I just wonder how many of us here truly appreciate it. And one of my favorite memories from childhood happened on a backpacking trip I took with my dad and my brother to Colorado. I've probably thought about that trip 1,000 times over the years. What happened was incredible, but that's not why I remember it. I remember it because the odds of it actually happening were so astronomically small that I've never forgotten it. We left home in late afternoon and drove all night. My dad believed then and still believes today the only way to go through West Texas is at night. And we arrived, sorry guys, we arrived in Pagosa Springs late morning the next day, and after stopping by a local fly shop to get a few fishing supplies, we went straight to the trailhead and were hiking up to Turkey Creek Lake by early afternoon. About 4 or 5 miles in, we entered this particularly tough stretch of incline and stopped to rest. And as we were sitting there on the side of the mountain, just relaxing, just appreciating our surroundings, we heard this enormous crashing sound coming down the side of the mountain above us. And a few seconds later, a huge mule deer came busting out of the trees and stopped on the trail right in front of us, no more than 2 feet from where I was sitting. And I still remember how enormous this thing was. I mean, it was 3 feet from antler to antler. It was just huge. And it was breathing hard, and it was winded. His sides were going in and out, and every time he exhaled, you could see his breath in that cool mountain air. And I was so close to that deer that I could have reached out and touched it, literally. And I've wished 1,000,000 times since then that I'd done it. I mean, think about that. How many chances do you get in your life to just sneak up on a wild animal like that? By the time I collected myself just from the shock of seeing this huge thing that close in front of me, it was already gone. And it didn't take him long to catch his wind. I mean, he smelled a sweaty junior high kid and slipped over the edge and continued down the side of the mountain pretty quick. A few minutes later, though, I could hear his hooves pounding on the river rocks as he followed the stream down the mountain. It was haunting, and I've always associated that sound with the sound of a missed opportunity. But I've never forgotten it. I've always been fascinated at the mathematical probability of that encounter. I mean, what are the odds of 3 men leaving their home 850 miles away and arriving on the side of a mountain at the exact moment in time that a trophy mule deer crosses their path? I mean, if we'd have just stopped one more time for coffee, we would have missed that moment. If we'd have stayed just 1 minute longer in the fly shop, we'd have never seen it. And if I'd have just stopped one more time to lace up my hiking boots on the way up, it never would have happened. So much that we can't fathom depends on the small daily decisions we make. So much hangs in the balance. And that brings me to this afternoon. You are here, whether you realize it or not, at a perfect moment in time. Through a series of thousands of decisions, you have arrived at this moment in your life. You're here. And the mathematical probability against it is overwhelming. And yet here you are. I believe that's because you're meant to be here. That your steps have been ordered for this exact moment. Have you thought about how amazing it is that we're all here? I mean, do you realize how unlikely this all is? 7 years ago, a group of state legislators in Texas decided the best way to prepare for growth in energy consumption in their state was to deregulate their wholesale and retail electricity markets. A year or so later, Jerry Thompson decided to re-enter telecommunications with a company focused on selling local phone service. And 2 years after that, some bureaucrats in Washington changed the tariff and turned his attention to opportunities in deregulated energy. A few months after that, he invited me to lunch at Potbelly's in Addison, Texas, to discuss direct selling as a marketing vehicle for electricity service. And 6 months after that, we made a list of 10 people that we thought might want to be consultants. And we are all here this morning at the end of a series of perfectly timed circumstances that have transpired on our behalf in order to create a unique opportunity for our success. Folks, this does not happen every day. It's a rare thing. But let me tell you something. The fact that it's rare and special and unique doesn't make any difference if you don't do something about it. In order to capitalize on a perfect moment in time, 3 things must happen. First, you have to recognize that the moment's happening. Second, you have to choose to step into the moment. And third, you have to stick with it until you achieve the success that you're looking for. In 1962, an executive from the pop division of Decca Records named Dick Rowe was standing before a unique moment in time. The industry was changing. Music was going through a transformation, and he was right in the forefront of that change. He just didn't recognize it. A local band had auditioned for him, hoping to be signed to a contract, and Rowe passed on him in favor of another local act called Brian Poole and the Tremolos. How many people have their album? When asked why, he stated the Tremolos had the right beat, and he didn't like the other group's sound. He thought guitar music was on the way out. The group he passed on was the Beatles. He was at the right place at the right time. He just failed to recognize it. So let me ask you, do you recognize how big this moment is right now? Do you recognize it? Guys, the largest industry in history is deregulating right now. At this very moment, billions of dollars are beginning to move away from monopolies to new retailers. Do you recognize that of all the other companies out there trying to take advantage of this moment in time, Ambit Energy is in the best position to explode? We have the best systems in the entire industry. We have some of the most impressive investors possible. Guys, we are partnered with the largest company in the world. The world! We are one of, if not the fastest growing companies in the United States already. Here's the best part. 98 out of 100 people that you talk to still are not our customer. And you are right here, right now. You have to recognize the moment. And then you have to step into it. In 1979, Kane Kramer filed for a patent on a small credit card-shaped device that he called the IXI. And it could store up to 5 minutes of recorded music. 5 whole minutes. It was heralded at the time as the most revolutionary device to ever hit the music industry. They called it a music recorder on a chip. He recognized the moment. Technology was changing the music industry. He filed for a patent on that device and continued to prove it over the years. And 10 years later, on the brink of commercial success, he got into a disagreement with his investors that left him distracted and unable to raise the capital he needed to renew his patents in over 120 countries where they were filed. Unable to step into his moment in time, he watched his invention become public property. Today, the iPod's the world's fastest-selling electronic device in history. And Kane Kramer hasn't been paid a cent of revenue on that device. He saw a perfect moment in time, but he let minor things distract him from stepping into it. Guys, since we've launched Ambit, over 60,000 consultants have paid $429 and joined this business. And in my estimation, that's a big number. Here's the thing that just drives me crazy. In my estimation, less than 10% of those have actually committed to it. Recognizing a perfect moment in time is not enough. You have to step into it, and you have to commit to it. You cannot look up or look back. You have to go for it with everything you have, and you have to stick with it until your success happens. This business is not about the investment, it's about the return. 3 years from now, everybody inside and outside of this room will have invested 3 years of their time into something. The question is, what will they have gotten in return for it? Most people I meet are a mile wide and an inch thick. They spread themselves out so many directions, hoping that one of those directions will produce a life-changing result. Let me tell you something, that never works. That never works. To be successful, you have to focus. You have to choose a direction, and you have to put everything you have into it. Even when you don't want to, even when it's hard, and even when people tell you no. Paul Young wrote a story that he thought everybody would benefit from hearing. He was excited about it. He had a passion for it. He took the book to 26 different publishers, and they all told him no. So finally, after 2 years of constant and steady rejection, he decided to publish it himself. And he borrowed $15,000 from his friends, and he did it. Then he took the books around in the trunk of his car, and he started selling them to anybody he could convince to buy them. And then something interesting happened. A few months later, he started to get phone calls from people who wanted to buy his book. 2 years later, The Shack has sold over 7 million copies and stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for over 60 weeks. And I just wonder how many times Paul Young had the opportunity to quit. It's got to be thousands. But he didn't. He had a passion for his story and what he thought it could do for others, and he never gave up on it. And you are here at the threshold of one of the most unique sets of circumstances that will ever transpire in your life. And each one of you has a passion for something, a big why. And the only thing between you and it is what you're going to spend your time doing for the next 3 years. And there are 3 things that you have to do to take advantage of this moment. The first is the easiest of the 3. You have to recognize it. How many of you recognize it? Do you recognize it? Guys, the facts are compelling all by themselves. They can give you the faith you need to recognize what's happening, but you have to step into it. Are you willing to step into it today? I don't mean pay $429. 60,000 people have already done that. Here's where it gets a little harder. I mean, are you willing to humble yourself enough to ask your friends and family to do you a favor and try Ambit Energy? I mean, are you willing to call everyone on your prospect list starting today and ask them 3 simple questions? Because action is the only proof that you're willing to step into the moment. And unfortunately, only after you take the action do you develop the confidence and the hope you need to keep moving forward. You got to do something, and you got to do it today. You've got to recognize it, you've got to step into it, and you've got to commit to it until your success happens. And only having a big why and learning to love helping other people get theirs is what's going to give you what you need to stick with it. 3 years from now, you're either going to be looking back on this moment and celebrating your accomplishments in Ambit, or this moment will haunt you like the sound of those deer hooves echoing down a mountain canyon. And the choice is yours. The facts will give you the faith you need. The action you take will give you the hope you need. And a big why will give you the love you need. But then that's the way of all things. That's the original formula for success. Faith, hope, and love. Love never fails. I love you guys. God bless you this year with more faith, more hope, and more love. May He open every door you knock on and break down every stronghold in front of you. And most importantly, may He give you a life of freedom and a future without fear. Thank you. Thank you, guys.